Stan said, be sure to tell you, this is what he's going to talk about. This is his new book, and it will be on sale upstairs in the bookstore. Immediately after the lecture, please go upstairs so that you can see, do everything upstairs. He'll go right up after he stops talking. And he'll answer. Don't ask him any questions down here. I'll give you my school teacher look. No, go upstairs and do that. But this is what he's going to speak about, Immigrant Trails. And he just said he would become a new member. So, stand
And when he does, he gets a copy of this book.
Thanks very much, Sue. And she's absolutely right. When we come here, we come free of charge. And that's the best way to freely receive, freely give. I got an appreciation for the Immigrant Trails, the Spanish Trail, the Pony Express Trail, way back in the late 50s when I was growing up in Las Vegas. And a man named Scoop Garside, yes, he was a newspaper man, was promoting the old Spanish Trail through southern Nevada. And then when I moved to Reno in the 60s and was going to graduate school and writing books on ghost towns, I was out with the gang on the Immigrant Trail, not putting in the markers. I didn't have time. I was a graduate student. But out there when scouting for them and looking around with Walt Mulcahy and a few of the people mentioned in this book. And The Immigrant Trails is a book put out by the Western Trails Association. And we've been in existence for about 7 years. We've put out 6 books already. This one here covers the Immigrant Trail, the 49 route through Pershing County, north of Lovelock to a point south of Lovelock. And then the trail split at a point where between Fernley and Lovelock, where US 95 from Fallon comes up and meets the Interstate 80. That's a very important point. I'll be referring to it by more than 3 or 4 maps tonight. But that is the key point, because at that Humboldt Bar or dike, that's where the California Trail split, one going westward to join the Truckee River at a point east of north of Fernley today, Wadsworth, and along the Truckee River through the Truckee Meadows or Reno and up on over the Sierra. Then more important for our purposes, and I'm going to spend more time on it, will be the Carson River route going from that same point where US 95 joins the Interstate 80, southward across the 40-mile desert to the Carson River, following the Carson River past Dayton Valley, Eagle Valley, Carson City, of course, and through Carson Valley here and on to Woodwards and on up over the summit, essentially aligning where US 50 is today. We're starting at 7:15. I promise my talk will be about 42 to 44 minutes. And I'm introducing lots of new slides, including this one here, So without further ado, if we can call for the lights, we'll begin the slideshow. And I will take questions and answers up here, notwithstanding what Sue Smith had to say. No, I don't.
Yeah, you never know these things. The lights go out.
All of the lore about the 49ers going west, the Argonauts, is well ingrained in U.S. history. And actually, it started when gold was discovered in California in 1848. But even then, before then, people were going west to California. The map on the left is a map of the now western United States. And that big gold area over there is the mother lode, and all this area right in here is the future state of Nevada. The immigrants went any one of 3 or 4 different ways. Some left ports over here in New York and Philadelphia, went all the way around south near Cape Horn. Others traversed where the Panama Canal is now. And of course, the majority went overland, and there were variant routes, and we'll talk about that a little bit as we go through the slideshow. At that time, when gold was discovered in California in 1848, and even the first ones going through in 1841 and 45, and we'll name them later, the area was all under the jurisdiction of Mexico. And you can see Mexico came right up to where all of Nevada is today, Utah, California, and close up of that map, the boundary was Oregon. And Oregon was part of the territory of the United Kingdom, Britain, but then the United States got it, and the area of Mexican influence would be all the way up to that border. And that was back in 1848. By 1850, after the United States won the war with Mexico, the Mexican War, then of course the United States acquired all of this land. Up until perhaps the last 5 or 10 years with the role of immigration, now the border's right back at where it was. And here's the political map, 1850. This would be all of California, but California became a state in 1850, and we'll show that. Here is the road to California. That would be starting from the jump-off points along the Missouri River, like St. Joseph, Independence, Missouri, near Kansas City, coming west over the trail through Nebraska, Wyoming. Here's a typical immigrant camp for the evening. Perhaps they might have stayed a couple of days here or near a settlement, as you can see in the background. Or around in Wyoming, here is an immigrant camp for the evening. They've come in. Sometimes they circle their wagons for protection from Indians, especially through Nevada. And then entertainment was provided. People had a violin or whatever, and harmonica for the evening. And cooking around the simple campfires you see here, or foods that sometimes game was caught, and food had to be brought from Missouri at that time. Now the immigrants were not just launching out into the deep without some guidance. And as early as 1850 and 51, people like Horn and Street and others were putting out guidebooks like this, describing from one point to another along the route through Nebraska, Wyoming, into Utah if you're taking what's known as the Hastings Cutoff. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then through southern Idaho, of course, along the Humboldt River, other guidebooks like this one here, another book by Hall. And they would describe mileages, and there was techniques for actually measuring the mileage along the route. Here's still another guidebook. And I own one of the first editions of this one. And the author is Hosea Horn, and I have his uncle's copy. It has a signature in it. It's a very rare book. But these would describe, like I say, miles to next point, and they might even be named like South Pass, Wyoming. And then it would say 13.5 miles to good grass or water here at the next point, dry, all the way down through Nevada and eastern California. Now, the majority came overland, but as I explained earlier, many came by ships from Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and this was an advertisement for people, to lure people to come by these clipper ships through over to Panama and catch another ship up the west coast to California. It's interesting to read this. Most of these images are in this new book. Do you want to go to California? Yes, yes, we want to go seek our fortunes, so forth. And so they came that way. And in San Francisco, after discovery in 1848, by 1849 there was about 800 abandoned vessels all the way across here along the harbor off of Market Street. And people would just simply abandon the boats and head up to the gold fields, which of course would be about 2.5 hours, today it'd be 2.5 hours away, up along the west flank of the Sierra Nevada, the mother lode. But you can imagine all those abandoned ships, and this is San Francisco in 1849, when it had a population of about 25,000. And here is the typical prospector's outfit. We're going up to the mother lode, and that was the lure, not only for gold or precious metals, but some people came west to be merchants, and some came to be farmers. And Sutter's Mill was the original discovery site, January 24th, 1848. And now it's part of Sutter's Mill State Park, beautiful museum, and the reproduction of all of Mills, John Sutter's buildings here at Coloma, which would be about halfway between Placerville and Auburn. Now, I mentioned that some came before 1848, and this man here, Langsford Hastings, was influential in that. There were parties going, Bidwell Barnes in 1841, there's others, but in 1845, Hastings put out the first true guidebook to get immigrants to Oregon and California. Now, he proposed a route that was somewhat different from the regular route through western Wyoming, southern central Idaho, and then into Nevada along the Humboldt River. He proposed what's now could be called a detour, and this is the one that the Donner Party took, and it took more time because it was a little bit longer and was not as good as the regular route through Idaho. But significantly in Nevada, the Hastings cutoff would go around the south end of the Ruby Mountains, which is south of Elko. Beautiful scenery, but it cost the Donners valuable time in 1846 when they were going west, and of course the fate was ill over in their camps west of Truckee and in Truckee, Alder Creek. But here's Hastings again. We'll move on. He's not one of my favorites. But even Hastings in turn leaned upon surveys by like John Fremont and his cartographers. They mapped all the area of western Nevada. Here would be the Humboldt River right here. Here's the pyramid and what's now Lake Tahoe, and all those north-south mountain ranges, which are in Nevada. And a lot of Fremont's maps were the basis for some of these later maps that were drawn after 1850. Now, the sport nowadays, or the hobby, or whatever you want to call it, is to go out and actually explore the immigrant trails, north and south of Lovelock, like I mentioned, and they're well marked. And if you find these markers, there's 72 of them, either up there along the Humboldt River, along through the Truckee River or the Carson River. One can actually walk north and east and west of these markers and be along the immigrant trail. And there will be, most of the markers now have a plate, a plaque on the top of the marker, which on one side would be a quote from an immigrant diary, and another one would be just naming the spot and where you were. But in this new book, written by 4 authors, which I was one of them. All of these directions to all of them are plainly given to the 10th of a mile, and then all the significant history nearby. Now, the first of these 3 routes, as I've mentioned already twice, is the Humboldt River route. And this begins north of Lovelock at a point near Inlay at Backus Bridge. And one can see 2 different markers here, because at this point on the trail, the Immigrant Trail, the main route to California, went southward through the Meadows, which would be Lovelock, and another one was called the Applegate Trail. And from this point, north of Lovelock, one would go across the Black Rock Desert and up through the High Rock Canyon and up to Northern California into Oregon. So this is a significant point for on the trail. And here's a map. I promised you a few maps. As you come south from Lovelock, here's Highway 95 down to Fallon. And here is the Humboldt Dike right here. And here's the parting of the ways, westward to go along the Truckee River, southward to through the 40-mile desert to the Carson River. And we'll be spending a lot more time on that than the Truckee, but let's do the Truckee first. Here is the marker at the Humboldt Bar or Dike. And way over here would be where Highway 95 meets Interstate 80. And it doesn't even take a 4-wheel drive to come over here to this Humboldt Bar and see the parting of the ways here. There's a rest stop over there off of Interstate 80. And the Truckee River route goes from that point, which would be about 25 miles east of Fallon, to Wadsworth, through the Truckee River Canyon, through Reno. And even the northern extremities of the 40-mile desert was pretty hazardous to cross for immigrants from that point that I just described, the Humboldt Bar, to get to the Truckee River. And this is the artist's depiction of oxen just lap up the water quick because they've gone through a waterless area for a few days, and now here they'll finally be along the Truckee and they'll have water all the way up into the Sierra. And here is a point about it's only about 7 or 8 miles east of Reno. Heinrich's Hill is what the researchers call it now. And this was a point of dispute between more or less the traditional researchers that have been around for about 40 years, and a new group which started with the research by one other person who said, at the point at a point near Lockwood, that's about 10 miles east of Reno, the trail actually went up Lockwood Canyon and came down through Hidden Valley. Well, that even the Trails West people don't even believe that anymore. The Great Hill is this one right here, described by a man named Henry Heinrichs in 1846, coming down that, very significant because it was very steep. And you get over east of Reno near the Sparks sewage treatment plant, and there was a settlement called Jameson Station. This road shown in the picture is now gone, but it was along the Truckee River to a point at Jameson Station where lots of artifacts have been found. Now, there's even a dispute about the site of this Jameson Station about 5 miles east of Reno. But there is a marker there, and it's marked. So, but the older researchers think that Jameson Station was at that point about a mile east of the sewage treatment plant. And a lot of artifacts were found there. But we're not saying that these artifacts shown here date back to 1855 and all that. They're probably 1860s. Someone lived there at all times until probably the beginning of the railroad going through in 1868. And then a lot of these stations just declined. And here's a map I found about a year ago showing the Truckee River right here. And of course, the accuracy of the map should go there and then down over near Tahoe City. Lake Bigler now being Lake Tahoe. But this map, drawn in 1852, is very significant and extremely accurate, especially for California, showing hundreds of settlements. But it actually shows in the Truckee Meadows Steamboat Creek. And that to me is very remarkable. And then we'll get back to this map later, but it shows the Carson River route over here, south of everything. But I just love this map because it verifies so many things that we've all believed in. And a close-up of that map, Reno would be right here where the upward route to northeastern California branched off the main Truckee River route of the California Trail. Now, even east of Reno, within eyeshot of Reno, there are pristine areas of the trail still waiting to be explored by everyone here. And they're all how to get to this point near Donner Springs, east of there, obviously, in an uninhabited area, is all described in this new book. Now, even people that study the immigrant trails will duke it out, so to speak, over the exact route where the immigrants went. Well, west of Reno is Verdi and Crystal Peak, and you go over Dog Valley Summit, and some say they went this way, some this way, and then this way. All the variant routes are described here. Probably all three were used at one time or another, past Dog Valley, west of Reno. And way up there, climbing, there's about 4 or 5 summits. One was Donner and Stevens Pass and all those. Here you can see, just to get over Roller Pass, a wagon here is dismantled and parts of it just had to be winched up, towed up, or not towed up, but winched up, block and tap or whatever, to try and get parts of the wagon up over Roller Pass. And then once up on the summit, the Sierra Nevada, then of course they were able to travel with much better ease down into the motherlode itself. And of course the Donners were encamped near Alder Creek and near the town of Truckee today. And here a researcher, after the 1846 incident, the Donner parties, this Waddell is out there in 1924 looking at the trees. You see the Donners actually cut the trees here, and you see how steep the snow was. And several of these trees just stunted like this at that time. The Carson River route is, of course, much more of interest to people from Carson City and Carson Valley, and we'll explore that for the rest of my talk here. The Truckee, we're going back to that map again, which is at a point south of Lovelock, where Highway 95 joins Interstate 8, Fernley's down here, where the first marker on the Truckee River route is at the Humboldt Dike over here. Here's the Carson River route. And we're going to go across the 40-mile desert, and indeed it was just such a hardship, probably the worst part of the whole immigrant trail. One guy described the 40-mile desert as, imagine yourself as imagine a vast plain of sand and clay, stinted sage, salt lakes, cheating the thirsty traveler with belief that water is near. And of course it wasn't. Water it is, but poison. A lot of it was salt, a lot of it was just brackish, undrinkable. And many diaries just describe how bad the water was. It was not even drinkable for man or beast. And going through the 40-mile desert here, Mark Twain, in 1861, now this is 11 years after the immigrant travel really was getting in full sway, Mark Twain, in his book called Roughing It, said, "We crossed the great American desert, 40 memorable miles of bottomless sand into which the coach wheels sunk from 6 inches to a foot." Now, I think Mark Twain may be exaggerating a little bit, but not too much. This was actually happening where wheels of the immigrant wagon sank into this playa. And we worked our passage most of the way across, and really what Mark Twain did, he got out and walked. They didn't ride a conveyance at all. And Mark Twain was going up to the area called Humboldt. That would be east of Lovelock, the mining camp called Unionville, to strike it rich. And he didn't have much water, The road was white with the bones of oxen and horses. In fact, he just goes on to describe that every step of the way there would be some kind of a bone left. The desert was one prodigious graveyard, and the log chains, wagon tires, and rotting wrecks of vehicles were almost as thick as the bones. They're just abandoned things, abandoned furniture, wagons, oxen died on the spot. That was what the early immigrants endured 1850, during the 1850s through. And many of them, you see, in August they were traveling across that 40-mile desert. Many of them would go at night and go across the go across the 40-mile desert. And this is the artist's depiction. Back in those days, there was really very little photography, and so, and especially if you wanted to print, if you wanted an image in the newspaper, you had to make a steel engraving or a cut of some kind. And this is one of those cuts where they're traveling at night, where it was much, much cooler, of course. But Margaret Frank, no, it was Lucina Parson, said that it was going across this route. That would be the route of the Carson River route. She spelled it R-O-U-T. You spelled it, obviously. R-O-U-T-E, but R-O-U-T. But that's really how grim it was, because it was a route. It was Mother Nature 36, the Americans nothing. We just football score. I mean, this was just terrible, 40-mile desert. And bones, wagon wheels, parts just stacked everywhere. Dead animals, by almost more than 1,000 of them for sure. And here's an artist's depiction of the sad story of one of the oxen dying. And here the wagon's loaded with all their belongings, but a lot of it would just be jettisoned off the trail at this point north of Fallon, across the 40-mile desert. And here's a map showing the 40-mile desert. Here's Ragtown, which is 8 miles west of Fallon, which is probably best known because there's a bar there today. And the Ragtown Bar, of course. And here's Fallon, Martin Fallon over here, the end of the desert. And actually, many times, wagons were temporarily abandoned about 5 miles, 10 miles north of Ragtown, and the oxen allowed to freely roam to the Carson River to get water, and then go back and hitch up and get your wagons. But here, the Emigrant Trail goes like this, over here, north of, barely east of modern Silver Springs. But at the Ragtown station, it was known because the immigrants would just simply put their tattered clothing on bushes and small trees, so forth, after washing them. But in the 1860s, 1870s, actually one guy came and established a rather nice ranch there at Ragtown, long after the immigrant season travel had stopped. And over at Buckland Station, which is along Highway 95 near Fort Churchill. Back to the map, down to the Ragtown and further west, going over toward, and here is the modern Dayton. This map dates to about 1859, 1860, somewhere in there, where Dayton is called about 3 different names: Dayton, Golden, Chinatown. And the map actually has Virginia City up the way there. But this was another desert, the 26-mile desert. Not quite as bad as the 40-mile, but still bad nevertheless. So for the next little while, we'll talk about going on the Immigrant Trail along the Carson River through Dayton and along east of Carson City until Carson City was founded. Then the Immigrant Trail went through Carson, down through Genoa, and then along the east flank of the Carson Range, where Joe Peak is, up through Woodford, and then up over the Sierra. So Dayton Dayton Valley was a place where some of the immigrants camped, but it was just about an average place for camping. There were others just about as good, but this would be east of Dayton. this is the map showing Dayton, probably in the early 1860s when Dayton became a pretty good sized town. And here's Gold Canyon. Now Gold Canyon is important because even 1849, a few of the immigrants noticed that very unusual mouth of the Gold Canyon at a point about 2 to 3 miles north of Dayton, and went up there, looked around, and actually found some low-grade gold. And in 1850, some of the immigrants described that. There were more than 100 diaries, and some of them described, some of the immigrants went up there, some of the men, just to look for gold, not to stay, of course, because the real prize was going to California. Now, these are, the next couple of pictures are depictions of placer gold or recovering rock gravel or sand gold in California, but then there's no images of Gold Canyon before the early 1860s. I found one dated 1862, and this, of course, is California. You can see here, you've got a pan here in the stream, and the streams in California are quite wide. Of course, anyone who's hiked Gold Canyon, and I've done it about 4 times, that stream is either non-existent or in the late fall, winter, when there's snow melting, it would be very, very small, but enough to do for gold panning or with a sluice. And now we get past Carson City, and we're at a point past Jack's Valley up here, and here is the Genoa Lakes Golf Course. Here, future Genoa Lakes Golf Course. You guys caught me. Here's that swing through Genoa. Here's Genoa Lane over to future 395, Nixon Avenue right through there. And John Reese came out here in 1851 and established Mormon Station. In 1850, it was up here, as it says, Old Mormon Station, where 3 Mormons established that. But John Reese came through in 1851, and Mormon Station, now Genoa, has had continuous habitation since early June of 1851. And speaking of Jack's Valley, here's that very famous bend off of modern 395. Right here, John Scorger's Nuggets joint is over. I mean, his ranch is over in here. But here's what the students of the Immigrant Trails love to do. They like to take GPS readings of the trail, and before you make that turn off of 395, you come past that school on the left, there's houses on the right, and make that turn to go down into Genoa. They've actually encountered where the Immigrant Trail was, and sure enough, if you park your car over here, walk over there, you'll see a real nice segment of the Immigrant Trail. Back to that William Eddy's map, I showed it to you when we were talking about Truckee Meadows. Now we're down in here, the Carson River route of the California Trail along Carson. Here is the area of future Dayton, and if Dayton had any kind of, or even Gold Canyon, nothing up in there, if they had any kind of continuous settlement, it certainly is not indicated on any maps before 1859. However, the jewel of this map is that Mormon Station is on this 1853 map of the state of California, and Carson Valley, which, by the way, I hope you guys can petition the trustees of the Douglas County Historical Society to rename this historical society Carson Valley Historical Society. A little plug. Anyway, back here, this is where John Reese would have his Mormon Station along with several other settlers. And as you can see, it's a fairly accurate map. The Carson Valley, Carson River goes right up toward Woodford's. And here's a close-up of the same map. And I think I've got another one. Yep, there it is. So you can see, now the map has a tatter in it, but this shows where Mormon Station was, and it was on the map. The best people, some people over in the Dayton Chamber of Commerce want to say they're the older town, older than Mormon Station, Genoa. But the earliest map that I've ever seen of of the Dayton area would be 1859, and I'll show it to you in a minute. But another thing that established the oldest town would be that Mormon Station was mentioned in the Mormon Waybill as early as 1851. And they had records here dating from November of 1851, and this record book still exists. I believe it's over in the Nevada State Archives. It was in the historical site for a while. We just have to ask the local historians about that.
It's there.
And then here's Colonel Reese's station there at the Mormon Station, which after 1855 is known as Genoa. It burned in 1910. And now, of course, there's a replica Mormon State Historic Park, complete with fence and a replica of the station house. Mormon Station, or Genoa, right from the onset. June of 1851, and had multiple ownerships of land up and down, not sections, but they'd be striped off, they were surveyed and so forth. And this helped to show that there was indeed a permanent settlement at Mormon Station. Other maps, here's a map, I own the original of this, 1855, and you can see here it shows the Pyramid Lake. Let's see, here's the Lake Tahoe, which flows out of Tahoe and goes along the Truckee River into Pyramid. And it shows the Walker River, it's way down off the map, and it shows the Carson River from the headwaters up here in the Sierra, past what they call Mormon settlements, which is a euphemism for Mormon Station, on over to where they actually petered out over here north of Fallon, modern Fallon. And here's another map, and showing the same thing, where the Carson River goes right past Mormon settlements, Genoa, and then onward past where Dayton would, in the future Dayton would be. But you see, all these maps show nothing of any permanency in Gold Canyon, which is north of Dayton, or of Dayton itself. And so I think it's, to me, it's no question at all that the oldest settlement in what is now present-day Nevada is Mormon Station, Genoa, and Dayton's claim is bogus.
Is there anyone here from Dayton?
A few of those slides, I've got lots of new slides I'm showing tonight, but a few of those slides I just showed you, I had an earlier talk up at Gold Hill. And a few Daytonites walked out after that. In 1855, this map was made by Colonel Steptoe. He calls Mormon Station, or Genoa, he calls it Reese. That's unusual. But again, nothing over near Dayton, nothing over near Gold Canyon. These were encampments up there. I'm convinced that anything in the present area of downtown Dayton was not inhabited year-round. Of course, it was owned in a series of land claims, beginning with, and they're all in the books, Bafford Hall to McMarland to Nixon to Major Ormsby and so forth. And then here goes the Immigrant Trail in 1855, and here's Ragtown. Now, if Dayton was so hot to trot, how come there's no Hall Station or anything over in there? But we have Ragtown, which really had only seasonal businesses. I think Ragtown had more importance in the 1850s, was more important than anything else except for Mormon Station itself. So, oldest town debate centers around what the word settlement means, and I think it's a place where people settle down, settle in, and the immigrant diaries. And by the way, this new book has more than 300 quotations of all kinds of immigrant diary quotes, the 40 Mile Desert, Carson Valley, and newspaper accounts from California. They're important. And these maps I've been showing you, and postal records. Dayton Carson Valley, or Mormon Station, got a federal post office in December of 1852. Dayton did not get their post office until January of 1862, almost 10 years later. And a cover, people collect covers, and I do myself, postal covers. I used to have one, but I needed some money in the 1980s, and I sold it for $350. Carson Valley, UT, Utah Territory. And I wish I had that back now. But someday you need money, and so you have to sell something. The Dayton claim is further diminished by the fact that here's downtown Dayton right there, Hall Station. The land claim there was just a few hundred acres or more. It didn't invite other kinds of settlement, or maybe a next livery stable or saloon and all that. Whereas I always showed you that map of Mormon Station where there was 5 or 6 landholders, all contiguous. But over here, there was only one landowner, and the settlement certainly is more than just one family. Even in the 1850s, and I collect stuff like this, there was a survey of the boundary, and this California Surveyor General comes over into the area of western Utah, now western Nevada. He describes page after page of stuff going on at Mormon Station, Genoa. And he goes up one day, up east of where Carson City was later founded, and describes Gold Canyon, and described nothing at all. He went up that area, didn't say whether there's people there or not, but certainly this astute observer would have noted if there was a settlement, and there was none. Now, here is James Simpson's map of 1859, and he's establishing a route through central Nevada where Eureka, Austin, so forth would be. He comes in to this area. He describes a place called Pleasant Grove. No one really knows where that is today, but Chinatown is where Dayton is. I mean, we're talking about a place now. Finally, by 1859, the future Dayton area finally makes a map, and it's Colonel James Simpson's report. The title, and of course, Genoa is well established, and Carson City. Virginia City's way up here. And this is the report that was founded. Simpson's writing in, right down here, his contingent is coming all on horses into the town of Genoa in 1859. Joe Peak in the background. And Genoa then had a newspaper, the Territorial Enterprise, before it moved to Virginia City. It had a few saloons, hotels, so forth. It was a regular settlement which grew into a town. But Simpson here in this report, and I didn't sell this, it's the first edition, and it's worth more than $1,000 now, mostly because of the map. That map I showed you. He describes Dayton, he describes the future Dayton area, Chinatown. A few Chinese were there, and he names one of them that washes clothes. But it was just kind of a nondescript place, about 5 or 6 dwellings. Whereas I just showed you, Genoa had several dwellings. Hutchins' California Magazine in 1860 came into what was then still Utah Territory. He wants to come up and see the big doings in the Washoe country, Virginia City, the Comstock Lode. He describes Virginia City, Gold Hill, Silver City, Franktown. He describes Genoa, right here, in 1860. Nothing mentioned of Chinatown or the future side of Dayton. And further south of Genoa, of course, is Wally Hot Springs. We have a nice little section in the book about Wally's, but I got to change the slides here. I've learned to bring my own flashlight. From the Immigrant Trails, I'd like to spend the last, get a little bit of time, 8 or 9 minutes at the most. What happened after this? Well, the immigrant era was really over by 1859, although it continued for another 8 or 9 years. People were still going west, but but the railroad, the Transcontinental Railroad, and the completion of it through the modern, well, Truckee Meadows and so forth. But the big news was Gold Canyon, which begins 2 miles north of Dayton and winds its way up past Silver City and Virginia City, is probably, I would say, still Nevada's most significant canyon. After all, there were Gold Canyon miners encamped in there from time to time. They stuck with the gold, and finally, way up near the future site of Gold Hill, there was this blasted blue stuff, and that was silver. And now that brought the first big mining rush to the future area of Nevada. And here's the trail coming over the grade near Myers Grade, right here. People people afoot. Some have carts. They're rushing to Virginia City area to get in on the ground floor in the summer of 1859. And J. Ross Brown, and it describes all this in a magazine article 2 years later. Here's some of the people heading toward the new silver discovery of Virginia City. Now, this is the stage, and obviously, people like this do not travel for days. This would only be a few hours ride, but nevertheless, J. Ross Brown described all this in 1861 and made lots of sketches, especially of the weather in Virginia City. There's more to this picture. I think there's a couple of frogs way up there, up in the air, and everything. Signs are going everywhere, and there's clothing and pieces of board just scattered here, hats and so forth, in Virginia City. See, now here's Dayton. By 1861, 62, it was a pretty big place. A definite town. Here's Gold Canyon up towards Silver City, and there were claims all the way along in there. As soon as silver was discovered, by 1862, Mark Twain says there was more than 15,000 people in Virginia City and Gold Hill. Dayton, 1862, big town, probably at least 1,500. Spread up and down the Carson River, you see here. Here's Old Town right there. So Dayton's significance is important for Nevada history because it was on the Overland Mail, it was on the Pony Express, it was the gateway to Gold Canyon, which is the first gold discovery. It has so many good things going for it. So why ruin it by claiming oldest settlement? Mills were built down the entrance to 6 Mile Canyon, Virginia City. This was a sketch and finally a photo of it. Big, right there, ooh. And then by 1861, Nevada became a territory because of all of the activity around Virginia City. By 1864, Nevada State. By 1869, 1868, the railroad was going through the new town of Reno, 1868, past Winnemucca, Elko, to join up over at Promontory Point with the building of the railroad from the east, the Union Pacific and the Central Pacific joining in May of 1869. But by the late 1860s, Nevada was pretty well populated. You see here, there was mining booms up toward Lovelock called Unionville, over toward Austin called Reese River, down toward Aurora, and many, many other places. Here's a close-up of the map. There's too many settlements to count, just hundreds of them. Nevada grew very fast. Virginia City, here had 2- and 3-story brick buildings up and down C Street. And these are actually bowls right there in the street. They would carry large wagons full of machinery and foodstuffs and liquor and food in boxes and liquor and mill parts and more liquor. And enough to supply a town of 15,000 to 18,000. Of course, Virginia City was in decline. 1868, came back with the Big Bonanza in 1872, and then the Sutra Tunnel being built. Plenty of activity in Virginia City, enough that it would have its own private schools like this. And the International Hotel was built after the Great Fire of 1875. 5 stories with a presidential suite up here, and it was occupied by ex-President Grant, after he left office, he came to Virginia City. There's sketches and photos of him. But C Street is all crowded down there, down below. It's now a parking lot across from the Bucket of Blood. Virginia City grew to be this size in the mid-1870s. Here's 6 Mile Canyon. Heading down toward Gold Canyon would be over that way. St. Mary. And Virginia City was festive, especially during like Labor Day, Independence Day. Here's the International Hotel. And down past Dayton, well actually down past, in El Dorado Canyon, south of Dayton, there was a toll road. Lots of toll roads were built in the early days. And you see this man right here with a gun, he's making sure that you pay that toll as you go over his toll road from a point south of Dayton into the Pine Nut Range. And Mark Twain made fun of the toll roads in Nevada in this map here. In other words, there's toll roads everywhere. This map is by no means accurate at all. It's Mark Twain laughing at us from 1862 over all these years. The state legislature would allow toll roads, they'd give franchises, and then after a certain number of years, the franchisee would have to give the toll road to the county or the state to maintain. And that's how a lot of early roads in Nevada were built. The ore of Virginia City was first processed in mills, quartz mills over there in Washoe Valley, near Washoe City. And over in that area, a lot of wood was cut and hauled by horse team, sometimes mule team, up to Virginia City. Photograph and finally an artist's depiction of the team hauling wood up to Virginia City. Virginia City needs all kinds of cut lumber, timber, logs, so forth through the 1860s. By the 1870s, Virginia City people cast their covetous eyes toward the Lake Tahoe Basin, Marlette Lake, to get water, and all around the Lake Tahoe Basin to get timber, cut timber at Glenbrook. If I'm invited back, I've got a whole story about all of that with plenty of slides that show the flumes and so forth. Here's Washoe City, which was the county seat of Washoe County from 1861 for more than a decade. It's a big place. And here's a silver mill right there. And here's another one close up. Here's the ditch coming in from the left to allow water in to power the mill. Here's the courthouse in Washoe City, over there. If you can't see it, now you'll be able to see it. And unfortunately it was torn down in the 1870s. Reno got the county seat from Washoe City. It was on the railroad and growing. It was the gateway town. And the new Virginia Truckee Railroad being built from Reno to Carson to Virginia City. I think he wanted close proximity. Myron Lake with his tavern and his hotel and the courthouse, close proximity between bench and bar. Now beyond that, nothing. No buildings at all. All the town of Reno was on the north side of the river, except for the courthouse and Myron Lake's Riverside Hotel, Lake House. Here's an artist's depiction of that same bridge and Myron Lake's earlier lake house. Chief Winnemucca is right there. Lots of Indians. This is a very famous painting. I think it's at the historic site, I'm not sure. Franktown was near Washoe City. That's where Sandy and Eiley Bowers, Eiley Orem, they built the fine two-story mansion. Nice county park, preserves it all now. East of Carson City was Empire City, and that was a town right near where the Empire City graveyard is today, the cemetery. It's right near where the BLM office is. But it was a big town at one time, and now there's really nothing to indicate the site of Empire City except for these silver mills. This one is the Mexican, which was built right on the river. I think it's called Deer Run Road, I'm not sure. Yeah. East of Carson City, down along the Brunswick Canyon, past these silver mills. There's the V&T over here on the side. Past the diversion dam for one of the mills. Here goes the V&T on the left, going toward the Merrimack Mill over here. I just can't wait for the V&T to be built from Virginia City past Mountain House through this canyon, to be on one of those first trains from Carson City eastward. And I want to hear that whistle go real loud through this canyon. I mean, can you imagine what kind of noise it would make? This is near the Vivian Mill, east of Carson City. These were all big silver mills to crush Virginia City ores. Here's the V&T in Carson City. And the V&T, here's the famous Gold Point Trestle at Gold Hill, right in back of the Gold Hill Hotel. And this would be jet black engine if this were in color. These are canary yellow baggage cars, Pullman cars. So here's a Pullman right here, just for passengers. But in the late 30s, the V&T looked like this. So you imagine these big 8 by 12 inch timbers, and the V&T, before it was all torn down when the Virginia Truckee Railroad stopped running to Virginia City in 1939. Piece by piece, just dismantled. And even blasted away there in case there were a few places where the timbers were, and the big nut and bolt, just massive size, were just frozen into the wood. It's all gone. So, and what's also all gone is some of our ghost towns. And this is my Jeep when I started ghost towning in 1958 near Pine Grove, and going over near Fort Churchill in 1862. I tried to gather as many old pictures and compare them with today, taking the picture of the parade yards. At Bodie is nice because the jail is there and about 150 buildings. And seeing old cemeteries. I put out a series of 63 maps in a book that's for sale here, and I've got more than 250 pioneer cemeteries identified throughout Nevada. I told you about those mills in Washoe Valley, that big Ophir mill. This is the only thing left, this one wall. At Belmont, Central Nevada, there are buildings there, including the courthouse. That's something to see. And things like this is along the Highway 95, but people come along and take away a board, and all of a sudden this Sodaville structure at Sodaville near Mina is just almost all gone now. And here's a sad story. Last summer I was out near Ely at the Everhart Mill, and there was a fire through there. And these beautiful timbers over here, and all the timber, I came through a week later after the fire was put out, about 40 miles west of Ely, and all that is burned down now. Our relics, our heritage is disappearing fast. And going south of Eureka, I was looking for this old mill site, and I drove past it, and I said, where is this? And I drove back, and I looked around, there was only foundations left. Here's a town of adobe buildings south of Goldfield. And the beauty of going out ghost town and exploring the immigrant trails and histories, you go along and just let your mind at ease and go, just wander back and imagine this old railroad grade, this railroad siding here where there used to be a few houses. But there comes a time when you have to get off the immigrant trails and away from the desert because of storms or towards sunset, and let the desert denizens take over. And with that slide, I end my ghost town and immigrant slideshow for this evening.